Hello everyone, and welcome to video number 5. So, you know what's cool? Fungi. And you know what we're going to talk about now? Also fungi. Let's go. So, fungi are actually super important. And they're super important as land organisms. They play key roles in land-based ecosystems in terms of nutrient cycling. They can act as predators, pathogens, and parasites of lots of other organisms, and they can be found living in symbiotic associations with plants, algae, animals, and other organisms. So that makes it a tiny bit surprising, I guess, that when it comes to looking at the evolution of land based ecosystems and the evolution of fungi, there isn't that much work on their fossil record and how they moved onto land. But that's probably because it's just really hard. Their fossil record is actually quite patchy. It's very hard to interpret, and that's in large part because there's a preservational bias there. Fungi tend to be soft, quite small microscopic organisms, and they tend to be hard to distinguish from other microbes, from other small scale life. The fossil shown on the far left-hand side here is the earliest proposed member of the fungi. This was described in 2019. I've put the reference for that on the slide for you here. And it's from the Grassy Bay Formation, a rock deposit in Arctic Canada. This makes it somewhere between 890 and 1,000 million years old. Now, that date for the origin of fungi, based on that fossil, is consistent with estimates based on molecular clocks of fungal emergence. It was found in a shallow water estuarine shale, so an aquatic rock, and so presumably predates the move of fungi onto land. Exactly how fungi then went from being organisms that lived in the water to living on land is a matter currently of speculation. The fossil record at the moment isn't really complete enough to give us much of a picture. This paper here from Naranjo Ortiz and Gabaldon in 2019 basically has a go at thinking about how this may have occurred based on living fungi today, and it highlights 3 possible routes by which fungi may have moved onto land. That could have been either by association with plants, they say, by association with soil, or by association with ice. But at the moment, it's really hard to tell between those different possibilities. If you want to learn more about that, please do see that paper for details. I think it's a really accessible and good read. But either way, we can say that early land-based fungi, presumably, like many fungi do today, acted as decomposers of plant material or as parasites to living plants. Those are common modes of life. But we should note that they also have this intimate connection to plants that are alive today in the form of mycorrhiza. I've put a definition of this on the slide for you here. The mycorrhiza is the mutually beneficial association formed between fungi and the roots of plants. It's a very common form of mutualism, estimated to occur in over 90% of terrestrial plants. So they're actually really important, as well as in their own right, but in terms of their association with plants. And what I can tell you is both parasitic and mycorrhiza associations or interactions were present in the fossil fungi that we have from the Rhynie chert, this first glimpse into life on land in this beautiful Scottish rock. The Rhynie chert fossils show that parasitism, this is a parasitic association between a fungi and a plant root, occurred by 411 million years ago, and shown middle here is an example of a saprotroph. That's something that eats decaying, or sorry, I should say processes decaying organisms, and a mycorrhizal association is shown on the right hand side here. So already by 411 million years ago, by Rhynie, fungi are performing the ecosystem roles with which they are associated today. We think, even though we don't have the details of how it occurred, that the shift to living on land for fungi led to an explosive diversification. Fungal diversity today is dominated by species that live in terrestrial environments. And for that reason, understanding the terrestrialization of fungi is really important, even though very challenging. So that's a little bit about fungi. But I also wanted to highlight lichen at this point. So lichen are also really important. Somewhere between 6 to 8% of the land surface of Earth is covered by lichen. Lichen. Lichen are found in all terrestrial land-based biomes, but particularly they're important in those that are hostile to other forms of life that are photosynthetic. Examples include high elevation mountains, tundra, and deserts. Now, a lichen is actually a composite organism. It's not a single thing. There's a definition on the slide for you here. A lichen is a composite organism which consists of a fungus and an alga or cyanobacterium living in symbiotic association. Okay, so lichens are actually a combination of two different groups of organisms living together in a mutually beneficial relationship. Surprisingly, there's actually quite a good record of candidate lichen, some of which even date back to the Ediacaran period, so before the Cambrian explosion. Although those remains, those fossils, are actually still contested. But what we can say for sure is that there are lichens in the Rhynie chert. So lichens had evolved by 411 million years ago. So they were on land by this time. And I've put a reference here to a recent paper that identified a previously problematic fossil as a lichen. So this problematic fossil is called Spongiophyton, and this is a common and widespread fossil in the early through to the mid-Devonian. Researchers have been trying to work out what it represents for many, many years, and this paper from 2025 uses an array of different analytical techniques, ways of understanding both the morphology and the chemistry of this fossil to try and better understand what it may be. So it looks at the gross morphology of this fossil that's shown on the left-hand side here. This is an example of a Spongiophyton, and it also looks at the cellular structures shown on the right-hand side here. And it coupled that study of the morphology of these things with their chemistry and the mineralogy of their preservations to make the case that what this thing actually is a widespread lichen. It's come out very recently, and so I suppose if anyone's going to write a paper saying, no, we think they're wrong, they won't have done that yet. But if this paper is correct, lichen was a prominent component of Devonian land cover. So early terrestrial ecosystems had a lot of lichen in them, if this paper is correct. And this means that lichen could have been an important contributor to changes to weathering and soil formation as plants were moving onto land and evolving. So they may have played an important ecosystem role above and beyond really what we see today. So that's also really interesting. I wanted to finish off with a final weirdo that I just couldn't write this without mentioning this. This is a weird thing called Prototaxites. This is another widespread but previously unidentified, or at least I say unidentified, what this fossil actually was has remained a mystery. This fossil, though, is very prominent in early land, especially kind of plant and animal ecosystems. It first appeared in the late Silurian, and it was prominent until the late Devonian. And this is a thing that's made up of tubular filaments of varying sizes that are interwoven together to produce tree-like or columnar structures that can exceed 8 meters in height and 1 meter in width. You can see a reconstruction of some of these organisms on the left-hand side here. So at a time when plants were really quite small, they were not significant big things, this thing, Prototaxites, whatever it was absolutely massive. It was truly a giant of its time, and it would have towered over the surrounding vegetation. Its affinities, what it's related to, have been debated for about 150 years since it was first discovered. The most prominent theory in recent decades has been that it may have been a fungus, perhaps related to different to living groups, or perhaps part of an extinct lineage. This recent paper that I am citing here from Lauren et al. 2026 looks at examples from the Rhynie chert, which are shown in the middle. These fossils are shown in the middle here, in which it was by far the largest organism. And actually, I think this is a really nice paper because it makes the case that this organism, in terms of its anatomy, was unlike all the fungi that are known from that deposit. So it's unlike fungi in terms of its overall morphology, but it takes that a step further and does a chemical analysis of this fossil. The graph on the right-hand side here shows that analysis. It uses a form of multivariate statistics of a chemical mapping approach to map the fossilization products of the organisms that are found in the Rhynie chert. And as you can see, Prototaxites in yellow here plots far away from the other things that this could possibly be a representative of in terms of its chemistry. And the authors of that paper use this chemical map and this chemistry to suggest that it is a representative of a now entirely extinct land-based lineage. So that's, I think, a potentially really exciting finding, that there were big things that weren't necessarily anything that is currently on land today that were around in early terrestrial ecosystems. Again, it's a very recent paper, so we'll see what everyone says about it. That brings me to the end of video number 5, and I'll see you shortly in video number 6 when we talk about arthropods moving onto land. It's going to be great. See you there.